Hello, 7th graders. This is a video in order just to go over some of the components of the Aztec civilization. If you did one of the components of the Aztec civilization for your research project, then some of this might be review, but a lot of it's going to be new information just to get a large snapshot of the Aztec civilization and all the various components. What you have in front of you is a note-taking sheet. So as we go through the presentation, pay attention to the words in red because they most likely go into one of the fill-in-the-blank spots on your note-taking sheet. There are also some activities in which you can do, in which you will pause the video, do the activity from the information on the slideshow. So let's get started. So first off, why were the Aztecs considered a civilization? Well, they have all the necessary aspects, such as a developed government, developed arts, and developed social structure. They had cities larger and more advanced than the ones in Europe at the time. This is very interesting because we don't usually think of civilizations from the Americas being more advanced than ones in Europe. However, they were. And overall, they had incredibly advanced technology. For a long time, the Aztecs were nomads, which means they roamed around all over Mexico looking for a place to settle. Yet most tribes drove them out because they would steal people from the other tribes in order to sacrifice to their gods. However, when they saw an eagle perched on a cactus with a snake in its mouth, one of their priests decided that this was a sign in which locating the place that they should settle and build their capital city. Therefore, they decided to settle in the Valley of Mexico on Lake Texcoco. Today, their capital city is underneath Mexico City. This region was very swampy, which made it hard for them to build their capital city. They had to come up with many new technological advances in order to do this, and we will go over some of those later in the presentation. This is a map of the Aztec Empire, and then this is an artist representation of the capital city of Tenochtitlan. So please take a moment and pause the video to fill out the map on your worksheet, as well as locating and labeling the location of the city of Tenochtitlan on the map. Central government and law code. The Aztec capital, like I said, was Tenochtitlan. This is where the Aztec emperor lived. His title was Huichitlanican. Please excuse my mispronunciations, they're hard words. The emperor was worshipped as a god. The Aztecs, similar to Mayans, had city-states that were ran by nobles selected by the emperor. However, although different to the Mayans, all of these city-states were under the power of the emperor at the capital city of Tenochtitlan. These cities had to pay tribute to the capital city, but were left with certain freedoms. Tribute is when you pay either in money, goods, or slaves to the capital city in order for protection. Each capital city had a city council that controlled that city. However, like I said, they were all under the power of the emperor at the capital city of Tenochtitlan. The Aztec empire had a strict law code, which was written down. These laws and codes of behavior applied to all citizens of the Aztec Empire. The punishments were often very severe. Many of them were punishable by death. As you can see from the picture below, a judge has declared a man guilty of a crime and he is being choked to death. Judges were able to interpret these laws in each of the different cities. Please pause the video now and answer the question regarding why it was important that these laws were written down and what that allowed the Aztec Empire to do. Next is social structure. The ruler was considered a god and had supreme control. His position was not hereditary, which means it did not automatically go to his sons. Instead, a group of nobles decided who the next ruler would be. The next step down were government officials, priests, and military leaders. These people counseled the empire, worked as judges, and ruled the city-states. Priests did all religious ceremonies and controlled the schools. Commoners, this included spies, merchants, traders, craft people, artists, farmers, laborers, and servants. This was the large majority of the population. Then there were peasants, who were considered free but still lower than commoners. And then at the very bottom were slaves, which were prisoners of war, lawbreakers, or people with debt. These slaves had many rights and could work off their debt and become free people. Please take a moment to pause and fill out the empty social pyramid on your worksheet. The next section is religion. Aztec religion was central to life. They believed the gods controlled all aspects of life. They were terrified of what would happen if they angered the gods. Therefore, they did many things in their day-to-day life in order to keep the gods happy and to keep the world continuing to go. They were very afraid of the end of the world. The most important god was, I cannot pronounce it, but it is here in red. And this was the god of sun and war. The Aztecs believed that in order for the gods to be satisfied, they required blood sacrifices. This could be in the form of animal sacrifice. Priests also sacrificed their own blood to the gods. But during the height of the Aztec Empire, there were large amounts of human sacrifices happening on a regular basis in order to keep the gods satisfied. This is an image of a sacrifice taking place and a heart being torn out of a human body. To the right, you see an artist's rendition of the Great Temple located at the capital city. Sacrifices would occur at the tops of these temples, and many times bodies or blood would be let or thrown down the stairs of the temple. This is a statue of one of the most important gods in the Aztec Empire. Like I said, the god of the sun and war. The Aztec economy was very cool. The most important crop was corn or maize. Other important crops included bean, squash, avocados, tobacco, hemp, and peppers. Aztecs used things called chinampas to farm. These were basically floating gardens. And what they would do is in the shallow waters, the swampy waters of Lake Texcoco, they would build up these large piles of earth, and they would create things called floating gardens, chinampas. This was because they had to find more land in order to farm, in order to feed their growing population. Swampy land is not usually good for farming, and so therefore, their technique of building chinampas was incredibly innovative and allowed them to survive in an environment that may not have been originally very good for farming. The Aztecs used large marketplaces to trade goods such as slaves, jewelry, clothes, food, art, anything that they could have desired. They were found in these large central marketplaces. Merchants were very well respected in Aztec society. Quachitli was a fine woven cloth that was very valuable in Aztec society and was traded for other exotic high value goods. And finally, the cocoa bean was used as currency and money. Here is a box in the left-hand corner with corn on it, which just illustrates how important corn was to the Aztec society. And then on the bottom right, we have a painting that was done by an artist that is called the Great Marketplace at Tenochtitlan. So please take a moment and pause to look at this video and look at just all the various, or picture, and look at just all the various things that are going on in this market. It's clear that markets would have been a very important place in the Aztec society, not only for economic reasons, but also for social reasons. The written language of the Aztecs is called Nahuatl. They adopted this language from the surrounding people when they settled into the Valley of Mexico. It's a very old language. The writing had three primary functions, which included to mark calendar dates, to record accounting mathematical calculations, and to write names of people and places. So it was really to record the information of their city. This is an example of some of the pictures or symbols that would represent the language of the Aztecs. The Aztecs were amazing builders. They built huge temples to their gods, like the Great Temple at Tenochtitlan. The Aztecs used primitive tools like stones, chisel, and blades. They also built large temples, palaces, plazas, and all on this incredibly swampy land. Therefore, the Aztecs had to build incredibly strong foundations to build such huge things on swampy lands. Technology in the Aztec civilization was incredible, and it's one of the aspects of Aztec civilization that makes it so cool to learn about. The Aztecs had to come up with technology that allowed them to build huge buildings on such swampy ground, like I said. They stuck large poles into the ground to create these strong foundations that allowed them to build up and allowed these buildings to remain stable. They built huge aqueducts in order to transport enough fresh water for them to drink and to water their plants. They also built dams in order to control the flow of water in and out of the lake that they lived on. Canoes were also extremely important in their transportation of goods and people because they lived in the middle of a lake. Like the Mayans, the Aztecs also had extremely advanced calendar system that helped them mark time. This is an example in the top left of an aqueduct, and in the top right you have an artist map of Tenochtitlan. So you see the various aspects like dams, we have causeways in which connected the outside lands to the middle of the city and allowed people to move in between them. Really cool technology that allowed these people to live in the middle of a lake. The natural world was a common theme in Aztec art. This included animals, landscapes. Many of the stories of the Aztecs were told in pictures, which also provided many opportunities for artistic expression. Statues were another form of art. They were made of stone. Aztecs' masks and pottery and shills were also very important types of Aztec art. Art could be made with gold, silver, copper, jewelry, feather, clay, stone, wood, basically any material. You could make something artistic out of it. Here are some examples. We have some masks that are very cool, statues, carvings, mosaics, things like that. Really cool art comes from the Aztecs. And finally, cultural institutions. The Aztec ball game was called Umatilzli. Very hard to pronounce. Each team tries to get a rubber ball across the center line and also into the holes on the side of the courts. The Aztecs actually had professional ball players that were treated like royalty. Patoli is another type of game. It was a board game played by the common people as well as nobles. Marriages in the Aztec culture were arranged by families of the bride and groom and were incredibly elaborate affairs. Also, I forgot to put this into the slideshow, but the Aztecs were one of the first civilizations that made schooling mandatory for all citizens. So all children had to go to some sort of official school. This is incredibly innovative and which probably led to a large success, like having an educated population like the Aztecs would have led to these large technological advances and architectural triumphs that we see in the Aztec culture. Here is an example of a Patoli board game, and then here is a picture of the Aztec ball game. You have the court, the two holes on the side, and two teams represented by the two men playing said game. Here is an image of the marriage ceremony. You can see a man and a woman being married, being tied. It would have been a very elaborate ceremony and a very large party. So that is the end of this video. Please take the time, if you missed anything, to go back and fill out the note sheet given to you.